everyone. Kaori over here with the beautiful, lovely
Aw, so sweet. That was the best intro ever.
I know. I could have gone forever and ever about how delightful you are. You cut me off, huh? No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
No.
What are we even talking about today?
Yeah, we're talking about how wonderful you are and how wonderful wrestling is. A lot of wrestling news, but not a lot of wrestling news this week. But we are here to talk about whatever captured our interest, and we are going to talk about it. So last week we had an episode that was a little later than usual, so we won't be talking about Raw this week. But if you want to know what we thought about Raw last week, then go to last week's episode. All right, so this week, let's start with some topics, some hot topics. The first one that came at the forefront this morning, or this afternoon rather, I want to mention Shad Gaspar has gone missing. As you know, we're from LA, and LA has recently opened their beaches with certain limitations, obviously. You can only go to the beach if you are doing some sort of activity, whether it's walking, jogging, swimming, surfing, beach volleyball, but you can't lay on the beaches as far as I know. So the word is a man and his son went swimming. The riptides caught them both. Lifeguards came to the rescue, and the man told them to save the son first. And then when they tried to save the man, he got caught by another riptide and has disappeared since. And TMZ is saying it's Shad Gaspar. So all over the news, everyone's thinking it probably is him. Mm-hmm. There's no confirmation yet that it is Shad Gaspar. And if you know Shad Gaspar, he wrestled with the WWE as a tag team partner in Crime Time with JTG. I think it was in 2007, 8, around that time, I'd like to say. So it's just a really, really tragic way to go.
So sad.
Yeah.
I just looked it up just to see if there's been any updates, and everybody's confirming that it is indeed Shad who's missing. No updates in terms of that his body or him have been found. Yeah. I mean, but put yourself in that position. I'm reading the article. Your son or you, like that. I know we. There's always those like hypothetical what if questions that you would ask your parents as a kid, like who would you save, me or my brother?
Yeah,
you know, but
right.
Like this is a real thing that has happened, and I think any parent who's put in that position, of course, your first reaction is going to be save my child.
Of course. So imagine, in some ways, he's kind of a hero, and I hope they find him, but it's it's one of those things that if he did get caught and he didn't emerge, it's difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I think in these types of situations, I want to be hopeful, but it's like the longer that they can't find him, it makes the situation a lot more dire and scary.
Yeah, I mean, Anne and I love the beach, and we love California, and the part that scares us is you never know when a typical day or something that you're so used to doing is not going to be a usual day that day, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think people go out there thinking today's going to be the last time I'm going to be at the beach with my son.
Yeah.
Or just a lot of tragedies this year. This year has been insane. And I don't like to blame it on the year. Obviously, it's any time, but there's just been a lot. I don't know if it's just been at the forefront of negativity, but there's just a lot of tragedies this year.
2020, man. What the heck?
It's so strange.
You've got a lot of people reacting to the news. You've got Bill Goldberg on Twitter, OVW Wrestling, John Layfield, if any of these names, Paige, Renee Young, so Lillian Garcia. So it's just, just across the industry as well, not just WWE, but across different organizations, people are reacting to this news.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's done some mild acting as well, and he's been a writer in some capacity as well. So he's definitely left his mark, and we'll see what happens. But that's really tragic news to see this morning under these circumstances as well. Okay, so next on to, some more kind of sad news, not as dark. There's a report that Drew Gulak has been released, or rather his contract expired with the WWE. He had his last match against Daniel Bryan last week on Smackdown. I think, was it last week? Sorry, last week, this week, whatever we're talking about. It's funny because now that the IC championship is empty, there's the tournament. Well, I guess we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it was Drew Gulak's last match.
Yeah. And it's funny. I'm chuckling over here because when we were watching his match, I'm like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Like jokingly, because I've never seen him without Daniel Bryan, you know, like at least in how I've been introduced to him, he's always been synced up with Daniel Bryan. So I'm like, who's this guy fighting? And then it turns out that was his last match at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was actually I know we'll go into the results of each of the shows, but it was actually a pretty good match too. It's just unfortunate that was his last one.
Yeah, Drew Gulak has a pretty good name. He had I think the Cruiserweight Championship for a while. So, I mean, they were giving him a push, but Cruiserweights, their pushes are limited, I think. They always kind of stay in that Cruiserweight. It's like the eternal mid-card level, right?
Yeah.
Wish him the best. I'm sure he'll do fine. There's plenty of indie promotions or big name promotions that would probably love to have him. And then we have the Undertaker news that he confirmed that he was going to retire at the WrestleMania 33 match against Roman Reigns. But obviously that didn't happen.
No, and that really does play out in that first episode of the last ride. And it's not a joke. Like, Undertaker is probably his own harshest critic.
Yeah.
And you could see it in his face as he's rewatching the match. Like, shortly after the match happens, he's rewatching the match, and you could just see the look of disappointment in his face.
Yeah. I remember that.
The match just did not go the way he wanted. There was some botches here and there, and I think, and I haven't dove into episode 2, which I'm really excited to watch, of that documentary, but they allude to the fact that he was just so disappointed that he was like, no, I can't go out that way. That can't be the last memory of me. Like, you could tell he was, leading up to that match, he was preparing to be done.
It almost felt like that.
Yeah.
It did.
Absolutely. The emotion was there.
The big goodbye was really strong.
Yeah, he puts his gear in the ring. He goes kisses his wife and kids. Like, that was supposed to be it. But then I guess if you have that type of personality where you're just like, that can't be, like, same thing's happening in the NFL with Tom Brady. Tom Brady's thinking, like, that can't be my last performance in the NFL. Like, people who work really hard at their craft, you don't want that to be like the thing that you're remembered by.
I think as we were talking about in our last episode, there is that tinge of addiction going on too.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, you used a great word last week. Yeah,
and
for sure.
we're never. I don't think, as people who are really good at their craft and glorified for the craft that they do, and it's time to say goodbye and time to retire, or not know, but you feel that it is, and you do that. But I don't think you're ever going to feel completely satisfied with your goodbye.
For sure,
especially when you have that addiction. And I mean, the Undertaker, he's got it kind of made. He doesn't have to be there 24/7. He just kind of shows up, and he doesn't have to wrestle until like one event every year, right?
And then and that's a great point. But to play devil's advocate on that, I think it kind of also hurts him, because in that documentary, you're seeing he goes an entire year really without training.
True.
So then all of a sudden, leading up to this match, like biggest match of the year for him, he's got to get his body back and going. Like, things are a little creaky, like in the joints. Like, so there's things that, like, if you were performing regularly, maybe that wouldn't be the case. But he's got to get like shots into his knee and his hip. So there's just a lot of things. So I mean, that decision obviously is what he thinks is best for him, to have like the least amount of performances a year. But at the same time, in terms of conditioning, it's probably, I would think it's a little bit harder, especially at his age and how much bumps he's taken, to have to prepare for something as big as that.
It must scare him each time.
For sure.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I was talking to a girl who is actually an indie wrestler here. Her name is Heather Monroe. And I asked her, I said, what do you think, now that you are a wrestler, that people should know who are, viewers or in the audience? And she said, audience like, I'm paraphrasing. Obviously, I'm not verbatim. People who are in the audience can criticize and saying, oh, he's not that good. Oh, he's great. Or he's doing that. That was dog shit, whatever. But in reality, the moment they go into the ring, they're risking their bodies. They're doing the best they can, right? So they're really hurting themselves or risking their health for wrestling. So we have to respect that. And I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So when she said that, I thought, okay, I should not be so critical with some of the boo-boos, I guess.
I know. I'm like, that's a botch, but like, no way in hell I will ever be able to do any of that, to be honest. So.
Right. I completely feel the same way. Okay, so next news is AEW star Brodie Lee, who used to be Luke Harper in WWE, kind of talks about why he decided that WWE was no longer for him. And I'm going to read the quote. He was talking to Wrestle Inc.'s Douglas Canavan. He says, "That's the main reason why I didn't want to be in WWE anymore. It's because I knew those opportunities weren't coming. No matter how hard I scratched and clawed, no matter what I proved, they weren't coming. I wasn't one of the chosen ones. Now here I am. I'm proving it myself. But now it's like I know I'm great at professional wrestling. I know I deserve these spots, but now I have to show up and prove that to other people. So now there's a certain pressure on me because there's no one to blame anymore." Interesting spin on that, right?
Yeah.
So the twist of having more creativity and more freedom to be yourself is that if you fail, quote unquote, it's more on your hands than, well, creative told me to do this and that's why I'm doing it. Yeah.
Which would you prefer if you were in his shoes?
That's really tough, right? Because imagine if you were John Cena.
Yeah.
And you're like at the top echelon of this big machine. You would be okay with what creative gave you, right. I think. Even though you felt like it wasn't yourself, maybe.
Right.
But then on the flip side, imagine you weren't yourself and then you were still doing things, but you weren't at the top. You would feel kind of like, what am I getting out of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of the dilemma, right?
Oh, for sure. I think the correlation I can make is like when you're stuck at a job for so long and you don't feel like you're getting the satisfaction out of your day-to-day job anymore. Like you're kind of just doing the same thing because that's what you're told to do every day. Are you really advancing? Are you really like going to the next level of where you want to be in your career? Maybe not. I think for oh God, I just forgot his name.
Brodie Lee.
For Brodie, I think it's a hard decision to make. I mean, do you stay and maintain even though it's like a gimmick that you don't 100% love and you feel like you're not going anywhere with it? Or do you go somewhere and put yourself out there?
Yeah. I mean, this news, it's new news for us to hear from him, his perspective, but it's not new news in terms of what we've read or heard from other wrestlers that used to wrestle in WWE. Was at some point they felt kind of numb to what they were doing, right? So maybe there's something to be said about at some point you want to perform for yourself rather than for a company. Right. I think that kind of comes with experience and confidence. So it's like when you start any job. When you start a job and you have like you're fish fresh in the water and you're like, well, how do I swim? And they're like, here, let me give you some floaties. After a while, you get tired of the floaties and you're like, look, I need to go to a different pond. Right. I think that's kind of the trend I see. Yeah. But it's interesting because WWE is the biggest machine in wrestling, 100%. Like, sadly, no other wrestling promotion can kind of touch them in terms of money and superstars. So I think a lot of wrestlers dream of going there, but once they're there, after a while, they're like, you know what? I kind of miss the smaller light, the smaller ring, the smaller audience. Yeah. And there might be something to that. And I think that kind of resonates with a lot of people. Not just necessarily in wrestling, but in other facets of life. Yeah, totally. 100% agree. Okay, and the next thing we have is The Rock. He talks about his daughter joining the WWE, which I feel like I heard that eons ago, but I did not know that. And that came as no surprise to Anne. I really like that. That's super cool. Yeah. I imagine, though, she feels like she has a lot to live up to. It's The Rock.
Yeah, but from the way he describes her, she is confident as hell. And to be in that position where you are the descendant of, you are the kin of a legend in wrestling, it's big shoes to fill. But if you're equally as confident as Dwayne Johnson is, then hell yeah, you fucking go for it, right? Especially if like he even describes it as in that interview. He didn't know, like, this was never anything he pushed on her. This was something that she fell in love with herself and decided to pursue since she was 16. So super young, like...
she was the youngest signee.
So youngest signee. There's a lot going. I think there's definitely going to be pressure, don't you think? Like when she actually debuts, I think very similar to how any of the like kids or relatives of like people we know... Charlotte is a good example.
I'm sure Charlotte is arguably better in-ring performer than Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Arguably, right? Like not in terms of character, but yeah.
Talk about talent. Like it runs in the genes, and Simone is like a pretty tall, like she's not like a tiny girl, so she could compete, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Of course. And I think honestly we have tiny girls making it and
oh, for sure.
Being amazing.
That's true. Yeah,
so,
that's a good point.
You know, it's not necessarily about stature. It's just about hard work, dedication. And from what The Rock is saying, he's proud of her. And for a parent to say, I'm proud of you is...
oh, so sweet.
It's so sweet.
Yeah.
It's so sweet. And I'm sure a lot of us hear that a lot of times, but a lot of us honestly don't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't hear it. I'm sure my parents are proud, but...
it's like coming in this era of like the dad, like what's that hashtag dad? Oh God, dad mom or something like that, where, you know, you've got like, for example, Kobe and Gianna, like you've got these girls that are coming up, these men who only had girls as kids, you know, that are coming up. Doesn't matter what gender you are, you're going to do what your dad does. It's such a cool, like... yeah, I always want to do the stuff my dad did. So it's like so cool that you're seeing this like actually resonate with other families.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because it just definitely find time to be a woman, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes and no.
yes and no. Sure. Next up, women president. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, right?
I was asked this question once. What do you think you're going to see more likely, an Asian male president or a white female president?
Ooh.
Right?
I don't know. It's a coin toss now, man. Who freaking knows nowadays?
All right, let's recap some SmackDown.
Sure.
All right. So first up, we had Otis, who opened the show. Very entertaining guy. And, you know, Miz and his partner, John Morrison, is not very happy with him. Like, they just don't understand. Like, I don't get it. How are you holding this? You didn't even officially or correctly win this Money in the Bank, and you got the girl. It's just incredible. And it's funny because it's like, you're right, Miz, but that's why I love him.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Underdog. And I love his, ooh, yeah. Like,
ooh, yeah.
He's like the Kool-Aid guy come to life.
Does any of like the shaming of the fact that he's like so big bother you? I'm not sure if it bothers me or not.
I don't even think I realize it.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it bothers me.
Yeah. Because he also plays into it too.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm about to say was that something has to be said is if you let it bounce off your back, then people don't take it as serious.
Right.
I guess, you know? So obviously we're going to see, I think we saw a match towards the end with Otis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we have the Intercontinental Championship Tournament. I think we have a couple of those. We had Elias, who defeated Corbin. Again, I mean,
Surprise,
why are they always matching up against each other?
I don't know. I know. Yeah, right? It's
just like we saw that at WrestleMania, the biggest stage of them all, and now we're seeing it in a tournament. That's fine. And then we had Dana Brooke, who defeated Naomi, and I like that they're pushing Dana Brooke even just a little bit, but I hate that they're doing this to Naomi again. She was once
She's getting
women's
buried.
champion,
Yeah.
and they just don't know what to do with her. I think hands down, she's like a veteran, and she's also one of the best female workers out there in any wrestling promotion, and it just sucks to see her going out there to get squashed.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had the NXT Women's Charlotte Flair. She just cuts an in-ring promo. I think they're just utilizing her back and forth because they need people.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
and she's a big name. So, And then we've got Forgotten Sons, who Anne likes, and they cut a promo. So there's a lot of promos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I would prefer that they wrestled, but it's fine.
Yeah, for sure. But it's better than having them wrestle 3 times. Like every time you go on
That's
Raw,
also true.
it's like, Zelina's crew versus again.
Same
and
thing.
later tonight, it's the main event. And yeah.
Might as well just call it that.
I know.
Selena's crew Raw.
Selena's crew. And then we got the IC Championship tournament continuing with Drew Gulak's last match. And it's against Daniel Bryan. Obviously, Bryan is probably going to have to win because of obvious reasons. And he does. Pretty good match. I think they work really, really well together. I believe Drew Gulak trained with Daniel Bryan for quite some time as well. So, you know, apprentice and teacher is pretty entertaining.
Yeah, their styles they match up really well.
Yes. And then we got Sonya Deville and Dolph Ziggler who cut a
Another promo.
talking smack to Mandy and Otis. It's funny because I don't feel like we need Sonya Deville and Ziggler to help push Mandy and Otis. Like,
No.
they can just be.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I was like, sometimes you think, what are they mad about? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think I'm on the edge of, like, it's just too much hate against Otis. Like,
Yeah.
it makes me slightly uncomfortable. Yeah, it's just unnecessary to your point.
Yeah, I just feel like they can utilize those two people for something else.
Yeah.
Completely. I mean, Ziggler obviously doesn't need to be sitting there cutting promos about how much he hates Ziggler. Why would he be threatened by Otis anyway?
Exactly. Why? I think that's the question.
That's-
like, why? It's
yeah.
not just
It's just
yeah.
and what is Sonya's real motivation to suddenly hate her roommate or whatever, you know? This is so odd. Okay. Anyways, next we got Braun Strowman and Otis who go up together to defeat Miz and John Morrison. I remember this match now because Anne rewinded it back so I could watch Braun Strowman attempt the worm.
Yes, tried
It was not very good.
unsuccessfully, but you know what? Props to the guy for trying. He's the same
Yes.
guy who tried to dance too.
He's a big guy. He's a big guy.
It was a good match though.
It was a good match. It was definitely an entertaining one. I kind of like these two together.
Do you think Money in the Bank? Tell me this about the rules of that. Can you only cash it in for a certain belt, or can it be for anything?
I think it's for that title, the main one.
Oh, okay. So it has to be, if Braun is still holding it, it will end up being them two
Yeah,
fighting each
it would
other.
have to be Braun, or in the other Raw, if he moves over to Raw, it would have to be McIntyre.
Okay.
So it would have to be one of those two, I think.
It would be interesting. I mean, it's not like there's any immediate need to cash it in, although they kind of like tried to, that Otis was going to try to trick Braun with
Very
Mandy
cute.
running in. And yeah, that didn't work out as they planned it anyway.
I mean, honestly, I love the way Otis got the title.
I do too.
I mean,
like,
what just
okay.
happened? And like AJ Styles did such a great job of being like, "Oh my god!"
Yes,
and
it
fell
was
and landed. It was super campy, and I quite enjoyed that. Let's go a little backwards and let's briefly talk about NXT results.
Sure.
The main thing I guess we're going to point out here is that, unless you want to talk about anything else,
No.
you're like, nah, it's cool, is Finn Balor versus Cameron Grimes. Finn Balor loses to Cameron Grimes. So
I
what does that
know.
mean,
I
do you think?
don't know. And I think we were both watching it like, really? You know, like for me, it was more, is he going away? Is he going to go to a different show? I feel like they've built Finn up to be invincible, and then he loses this match.
That's why it's pretty odd.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have any
It's like he came
theories?
I have no theories. I mean, maybe Damian Priest is going to be involved in something. But I just can't picture what they want to do with Finn. When he's the one that came in and said, this is my house, this is where I started. And now he lost to Cameron Grimes, who isn't necessarily the superstar of NXT right now. Which makes it even stranger.
Yeah. I don't know. So bizarre.
It just felt like they're kind of lost in what to do at this point. And if I look back, we have Tony Nese, who was or is a Cruiserweight Championship. Interim. So they're looking for a new Cruiserweight Championship person now. He went up against Jake Atlas. I think Atlas won. Yeah, Atlas won. So Jake Atlas is pretty popular in the indies here. And obviously they picked him up for NXT. It's interesting to watch him in NXT now because I think they just need more performers.
Yeah, which I think it continues that I feel that NXT is the only show that they have that I'm seeing new people every week still that I've never seen before.
Yeah. And sometimes we've seen them. I forgot I've seen them.
Oh, yeah. Or, like their roster is that deep, whereas in Raw, like you're saying, same 10 people over and over again.
And same people doing the same match.
Yeah.
Same night.
Yeah.
Bookending it.
Yep.
And then we have Tegan Hartwell. I'm going backwards. Tegan and Hartwell. So Tegan Knox versus Indy Hartwell. Indy Hartwell was new to me.
Yeah, me too.
I don't really remember her elsewhere. Tegan Knox, not really digging her, but I can dig her better than the other one. I forget her name each time. The Bailey 2.0.
Oh, what the heck is her name? I see her face.
Yeah, you can see her face.
I don't remember her name.
The Kiwi. Anyway, her.
Yep.
That was a decent match, but I know Charlotte has the NXT championship for women, but we're not seeing the shuffling of much or the fight to get that much for the men or the female.
No, that's true.
Yeah, we've got the Undisputed Era like Skyping or FaceTiming or whatever.
Oh my God.
Every so often, but there's no challenge really going on. And it's interesting because in the meantime, there are some people that have to relinquish their titles, and then these guys are just in their backyards masturbating or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. And they're not. It's not like they're. I think maybe one or two of them are not actually in Florida, right? But the other half of them are there. So why aren't they in ring performing?
It's an odd thing. It just feels like NXT. What I used to love about NXT was the stories and like the build-up of these characters and getting to know them. But every week since coronavirus, it feels as if they don't know what's going on. They don't know what they're going to put on the show. It's just like straight like practice matches. Like, let's put you guys together and see what it looks like. Oh, let's throw in Undisputed Era on Skype or something. Oh, cool. Finn Balor, why don't you lose to Cameron Grimes and see how people feel? I don't know. It's just weird.
And how much of that do you think is actually impacted by COVID-19 at this point?
I would imagine a lot. I would imagine they don't have much to work with. Because of the furloughs and layoffs, they also got not only rid of a lot of superstars, but a lot of, creative writers. And so there's a lot of limitations, I think, that they have to deal with to meet up with their productions. So I think that obviously it's impacted, and we're seeing that. And I think as a wrestler, I'm not a wrestler, but from what I hear from many wrestlers in general, is a huge factor of wrestling and what gets them going is the crowd.
Yeah.
And even though we might kind of be used to it because it helps to have like special effects or whatever, they're not going in there with a crowd. So I'm wondering if that affects that too.
I'm sure it has to.
Yeah. Because I'm sure the crowd is what gets them going.
Right.
The cheers, the jeers, whatever it is. Now that that's not there. What keeps them, what drives them? I'm sure it's other things, but it's an odd time, and you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah.
For me, I think NXT might be the one hurting the most, but it has the most potential because it has a lot of people still.
Right. That's the thing. Their roster is deeper than everybody else. They've Yeah. I just hope that they can get some of the storylines moving or whatever they're shaking up, like get going with it.
Exactly. You want to get everything moving, and it just feels like it's in a standstill where I don't feel any pressure within the belts, like maybe a little bit, but not much.
And there's been some sharing of NXT people like across Raw and SmackDown, like within everything else that's happening, all the changes. And then you see some of the people that used to draw us into watching NXT, from the beginning, right? Like the Shaynas and the Rhea's like going after.
Yeah.
Like,
good point.
They've all kind of moved up. So now you're dealing with entirely new rosters. Like, who are you going to push?
Good point. Or not at all. We don't even know where Rhea Ripley is, to be honest.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her in a quick minute. She lost to Charlotte at WrestleMania, and then it's like,
right.
Okay. And then what happened to Io Shirai, right? We saw her a while ago, and then gone. She was supposed to be the number one contender. Did that even happen? That's the thing. I don't even know what's going on. Like, all of their top NXT stars are kind of, most of them, not all of them. Like, we still have Matt Riddle, but then he did 2 matches.
I know.
Right? So just what's happening? I shouldn't be complaining. I'm glad that they're still airing some shows. It just, it's reflecting that there's a lot of confusion, maybe. Yeah. How do you feel about NXT and Raw and SmackDown? And
I think some of the shows are stronger than others. I think for whatever reason, at least I'm more inclined to watch SmackDown right now, which has never happened. SmackDown has never been like the top of my list from all of those shows. I mean, even Raw, I think, is lost. I mean, you got the Street Profits doing a pickup basketball game, and I think like this week they did or next week they're going to do like a video game. I don't know. They're doing like challenges that are not even wrestling related.
Yeah.
So it just really apparent. I think NXT has to be the show that has the potential where you could just go balls to the wall crazy.
I think so.
Throw some people in a match together. Who cares if it doesn't work? If it doesn't stick, then change it up for the next week. Like, that has to be the show where you experiment and you try the different combinations. You try the different to try to push different people and be unafraid to do that. I think that's why I fell in love with it, is because that's what you need to compete with shows like AEW, where they don't have that deep of a roster still, in my opinion. But that's what you're up against week by week. So you got to take some risks to be able to compete with other shows. I
agree. I think the problem with NXT especially is that there are so many plot holes.
Yes.
Right? That we just
True.
We don't know what we want to follow.
Like
anymore.
Just like you're saying, you're like, she was supposed to be the number one contender. Where has she been? Like that.
Yes. And then Velveteen Dream came back, and then now suddenly I'm like, we haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Just need to tighten it up a little or something.
Yeah, and I know it's probably not their fault. There's a lot of things going on. It's just as a result of whatever's happening, this is what I'm seeing as a viewer.
For sure.
Anyways, that about wraps up this week's episode of Kaori and Anne's Wrestling Podcast. Again, if you have a name, go ahead and comment and let us know what ideas you have. But we are very happy with our name, Wrestling Podcast. In the meantime, where can you follow Anne? And go ahead and let them know.
You can follow me at Anne Campia. You can follow the both of us at Team Amasian.
Yes, and you can follow me at KAORIOUS. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll catch you next week for some more wrestling smack talk. See ya.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh, yeah.